Right then, on today's podcast, which is podcast number 6, I am with a very special person today.
You're very kind, Chris.
A lot of you might know Bill. So this is Bill Anderson, the most famous foreigner in Mijas, I think. I actually just read an article when I was doing a bit of research last night in a Spanish paper saying which we're going to talk about in a minute, when you came in to being a politician, that this Scottish man with a Scottish skirt turned up.
Yes, indeed.
I was like, do they not have a word for kilt?
No, they just call it Scottish skirt. Una falda escocesa.
I'm going to put that article below because that really made me laugh. But and today what we're going to do, we want to talk about Bill is an author, and he's a fantastic author, and he's got a lot of books, and I honestly believe that reading these books, especially for our clients who are going to be moving here, is going to be helpful for you, because it's not only going to give you a laugh, it's also going to give you an insight into Spanish life. And the 9 books I'm looking at on the table here, I mean, it's must reading if you are going to be moving to Spain. So anyway, first of all, where did we meet?
We met at a business networking meeting with Sam Campbell, Business First.
We did.
And I think I introduced myself as a male stripper because I thought it was less embarrassing saying that than saying I was a local politician.
I did. Now, I remember it was Jeremy RIFA who introduced me to the group, and I met Sam, and then I met yourself, and I can remember sitting in the room saying, "Male stripper?" Good on you, then. Obviously, after that, I understood the demographics of the group, and it was at that time you were a politician, weren't you?
So, I was a local politician, yeah.
And during that time, it was the withdrawal agreement way before. Sort of when people were looking at visas coming through, it's Brexit time, and Bill was dealing with an awful lot of residents in where he was a politician here in Mijas, and I was dealing with a lot of residency stuff. So we had quite a lot in common, didn't we?
We did indeed. And I think I gave you panicked phone calls on more than one occasion. Chris, what happens in this situation, or what happens there? Because I'm not an expert. I was very much a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
And I had to call on people like yourself and the late, great Ananda sometimes to say, look, I don't know what the advice here is.
Yeah.
So it was great having just the contacts of people who were really at the forefront of all of this, you know?
Yeah, it was a crazy time, and that's how the channel really kicked off, because we used to do videos, because at the time everything was progressing. There was updates and things were changing. Then when Boris Johnson decided he wasn't going to extend the withdrawal agreement, then everything changed here with immigration, and we used to get the same question 100 times in a day. So that's when I said, we can use the channel, because we didn't really know what we were going to do with it, to answer those questions, and we literally would just send people links.
Well, yeah, I did exactly the same thing, Chris, during the whole COVID episode, because you know that the information about changes was coming in BOEs, the official state bulletins, which are a nightmare to read. Nightmare to read. And some of them were like 70, 80 pages long. And I was trying to answer these questions, and like they were coming in faster than I could reply to them. And the same things were coming up again and again. So I started doing videos then to explain, right, this is what the new bulletin says. And when people were saying, you know, what about this and this and this? Watch the video.
I can remember, because you did an awful lot on Facebook as well, didn't you?
I put them all onto Facebook, and then probably onto YouTube as well, some of them. But Facebook was the main area of communication, really, the main means of communication.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's step back a bit. With obviously, how long have you been here in Spain?
I've been here 22 years.
Wow, so a couple of decades in.
A couple of decades in, the longest I've ever lived in one place, actually.
And before you were a politician, which we'll talk about in a minute, what were you doing then?
Well, I really, most of my time in Spain, I came out to Spain to teach.
Okay.
I retrained as an English teacher. I did that for a number of years, And then I have a degree in German as well. So I ended up teaching at a local
Man of many
hotel school.
talents here.
Yeah, indeed. I taught German for 5 years in a local hotel school here in Mijas. And then I taught at a private university, both English and business communication. And then I went into politics.
It's funny because I was talking about this to a friend of mine about this podcast, and he's actually been on the podcast. He did the first one with me, and he's a professor in the university. What's it called? Where you
La Roche.
La Roche. He's a professor there, and I went, I'm doing another podcast with Bill Anderson. He went, Bill Anderson? I said, nobody doesn't know Bill Anderson. How do you know Bill Anderson? He said, I used to work, the year that Bill left to go into politics, he worked in the office opposite me.
Right, yeah.
So that was quite funny. So I had a good conversation about that. And then, so how did you end up being a politician? I mean...
I have always disliked politics. I spent many years, almost 2 decades in the UK, working with politicians.
Right.
I did a lot of work for central government and then Scottish Parliament. I did a lot of work with local authorities and regional authorities.
Yeah.
And I really came to dislike politics. Not politicians, but politics, because it's fundamentally dishonest.
Yeah.
And I had my arm twisted because I was approached to present in 2019 on the idea that they wanted someone who was going to work with the international community. And for those who don't know, Mijas has 1/3 of the population are foreigners.
Right. Yeah.
That's about 30,000 foreigners out of 90,000 population.
So they wanted a figurehead in politics.
They wanted to have somebody as a foreigner on the team.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to complain that the foreigners are not considered all the time and then say no when you get invited to do it.
Yeah.
So that was how I ended up in it. But I've never really been a politician. I saw myself as a public servant.
Yeah.
And the politics of it is just, for me, theatre.
Yeah.
But I didn't like the political part, but I actually enjoyed being a public servant and being available to people and trying to help find solutions to their problems, or giving them information, or telling them, where they can find the solution to whatever the problem is. And, meeting with the then, I was in opposition, meeting with the then government counsellors and trying to find a way around the problems for the people.
It's a huge commitment, though, to go from a university to then, it's, as you say, it's hard to say no because you can't complain if you haven't got a representation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But that all landed on your shoulders.
It did, and in fairness, we have a first-class foreigners department here in Mijas, and I won't have a bad thing said against them.
Yes.
But not everybody was confident enough or found it easy to go to the town hall and speak to the foreigners department. They found it easy because I made my phone number, my email, everything totally available, which a lot of counsellors don't.
Yeah.
And people found it easier just to send me a WhatsApp and say, can you help with this? And then we'd meet maybe for a coffee and then try to find a way around things for them.
Talking about the foreigners department, I think it's Katja, is it? Who runs it?
Katja and Laura are the two staff there, and they do a fantastic job.
They do. I met with them a few months ago, actually, again, at Business First meeting. Unfortunately, I didn't see their last presentation, but we had a chat and I said, would you mind if we put something on our website? So they've got a little piece on our website about what they do. And I have to say, we work with hundreds of town halls.
Yes.
But that's our saviour because with Mijas, when someone's got a problem or they need their padron or this, that and the other, go down and see the foreigners department's guys. We don't have to send a translator because they speak English. And so we recently had a problem with an ITV where they had a volante instead of a padron histórico. Yeah. And it's quite hard to understand what the difference between the two. There's another video there. I said, just go down and show this email quickly to the town hall. And there was no appointment. They walked in and said, no, we need one with the first date of inscription, and they sorted it out like that. We've got,
and they do go certainly above and beyond. They will try to help people out with problems that are really not part of the job.
Yeah.
But no, they do a fantastic job. So Katja, Laura, excellent work.
And we're going to put a link below to our article, so if you do need to contact them or what, you need to know where to go, where we'll then you've got it on there. Right then, okay, so we've spoken about what you've done in your career.
Yeah.
So now we're going to get to the juicy bit, which is why we're here today. Let's talk about some books. So I've got 9 books in front of me.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're going to read every single one. So get a cup of coffee. So first of all, we want to talk about these first 2 here, which are A Diary of a Counsellor in Opposition and The Journey Continues. These 2 books here. Just to mention that I'm going to put links below to buy the books on. Are they all available on Amazon?
They're all available on Amazon, yeah.
On Amazon, in individual links with the titles. Okay, so I expect you all to buy every single book. But I'm going to put the links below to these books. So first of all, let's talk about these 2 books, which are A Diary of a Counsellor and The Journey Continues, basically.
Yeah.
These 2.
Yeah, before I started my work as a counsellor, I was writing columns for some newspapers, English language newspapers.
Yeah.
So quite a lot of what's in here are compilations of articles that I wrote for the newspapers. So they're all very readable chunks. They're about 500 words roughly. One or 2 of the sections are a little bit longer. But they really are a kind of reflections of my early involvement in the political world. And I think it gives a bit of an inside view on, what I experienced coming into the political world, being exposed to it in a way that I previously had just ignored. It was always there, but it never really interested me enough to look at it, to observe it. Yeah. So that is really what these are, and people will probably recognize quite a lot of the stories if they've been around here. And it's my take on them, my reflections on them, and then moving into the political world, seeing it from the inside. Right. So that, being inside the tent rather than outside the tent,
And so you see it from both points of view. And I do have to say, before this, your style of writing is so easy to follow. It's a very, very, and it's an almost impossible thing. Trust me, we write very short articles and find it difficult to incorporate a Spanish, should we say, twist or Spanish grammatical things into any sort of writing and make it sound smooth. And your writing, it's very, very easy. In fact, and I'm not a particularly big reader. Sure. And sometimes I find myself going back over stuff. But sat just skimming over, looking at it and laughing my head off. Your style of writing is amazing. So you don't have to sit down and make sure that you're concentrating. You can literally just pick it up and go through it, put it down and pick it up again. But this, obviously people knew you before you became a counsellor then through writing as a common.
Yes, a lot of people have commented that they looked forward to my articles because, it comes down to what do you think the role of the writer is, Now, some people would say the writer is there to entertain. Yeah. Or to inform, and certain types of writing are just about informing. Yeah. This is this and this and this, and whether it's history, it's information. I think entertainment can be one aspect of writing, but you have to engage people even to entertain them. So beyond that, I think that the role of the writer is to make people think. Sometimes it's to tell truths that are uncomfortable. Yeah. But it is more for me than just entertaining. Yeah. Now we'll talk about the latest series of books, which I hope are very entertaining. And if people want to read them and just laugh at them, then that's great. You've achieved something there. But I really want people to look, to observe, to look around them and say, oh yeah, I've seen this, I've heard this. It rings a bell. So, for all of the writing that I do, I really try to to push people's thinking a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important role of the writer.
Do you think then, in terms of, we're going to talk about the other books now, before people get stuck into your other books, this would be a great starting point to understand you as a writer, and
possibly.
they're quite short, easy to read.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think also that for people who have experience of Spain, they might relate to the kind of things that are in here, and the kind of observations that I made and reflections that I made as someone moving into the political world, and it might for them, I think, as I say, ring bells. I've seen this kind of thing happening before, and they relate to it.
Of course, because we always talk with our clients about this transition into understanding Spanish paperwork, for example. So like in the UK, there's virtually no paperwork. That's it. Everybody has everything online, whatever. And here it's very much paperwork heavy, stampity stamp and stuff. And this is a conversation I have with clients right at the beginning of their journey, is you have to look at this transition.
Yes.
So as you're reading that, you might understand the why that we have a diary of a counsellor. You might sit there and go, well, this is very similar to my journey, because I am sick of stamps. I'm sick of getting stamps on the back. I'm sick of apostilles in this. And some of our clients actually fight it. That why? And some clients, you've got to do it, really openly accept it, and they're like, it's okay, we know, we've been warned, we know what it's like.
Yeah, absolutely. For some things, there is no answer to why.
No.
It's in Spanish they would say porque sí, just because it is.
We always had this theory that it was a lot of the paperwork does keep people in jobs, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And I think I read somewhere a few years ago that Spain has half the population of Germany and twice the number of civil servants.
I read that.
And it keeps a lot of people in jobs.
I used to laugh when we used to have to go, when I was translating many years ago, way before the crisis, and every time I went to the town hall, they'd go intervención. So you had to go to intervención to go to anywhere. It was like, well, these famous people in intervention, it was everywhere. It was.
It just is what it is, Chris. And if you can't put up with it, then living in Spain is not the right place. And Spain is not unique in that.
Yeah.
I think most of the Mediterranean countries have similar or worse. In terms of the bureaucracy, and it is what it is, and if you can't cope with it, and you know what, we tend to think that we're disadvantaged in some ways as foreigners, but Spaniards have to go through exactly the same thing.
Absolutely. That's one thing that's really that's a huge important point.
Yeah,
because everything that we do as foreigners is exactly the same for a Spaniard when they're doing the paperwork. And even more so. So, it's...
I mean, when my wife was born in Madrid, her family moved to Australia. And they came back when she was about 17. Now, she didn't have a DNI or anything, a Spanish passport and all of these things. It was a nightmare for her. Getting all that paperwork in order to get all her Spanish stuff. And she is native-born Spanish, as were her parents. And so, it isn't a thing about foreigners. It's just that Spaniards are more used to it, and sometimes know little shortcuts to take, or know what to bring. When Vicky goes to do anything at the town hall, I carry a filing cabinet on my bag because she says, no, we'll take this and this and this, and we'll take this just in case, and we'll take copies of this and this and this, and the Libra de Familia. So we take everything with us sometimes,
It's quite funny because we would, I had the same with an ex-neighbour of mine, a very good friend, and he had to do something with a vehicle which was legalising a seat in his motorhome.
Right.
And we sat down over coffee and I said, no, you've got to do this and this. I've experienced it. No, we don't. I don't have to do that. I said, honestly, that's what you've got to do. And even when he went to the ITV station and they said to him, this is what it's going to cost and this is what you're going to do, he came back going, this is ridiculous. So it's not, it is, but then, on the other side of the coin, look where we live,
I know.
It's,
well, we were visiting some friends yesterday morning. They have an apartment right in the front in Fuengirola, We sat on their terrace, looking out over the port in Fuengirola, right down to Benalmádena almost.
Yeah.
And you know, all the way down towards Gibraltar, and you think, it doesn't get any better than this. I could just sit here and soak in this ambience, this experience all day. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, no. I was, especially if you're from the Fens, like I'm from Peterborough. Every day's a birthday when you wake up somewhere like this. So anyway, so let's get on to the next trilogy, which we're going to call the Butterfly trilogy, aren't we? So the Butterfly trilogy. Now, you gave me a brief explanation of this, but now I need you to repeat exactly what you said before.
Okay, yeah. Well, this is interesting because the first novel I published was the first novel of this trilogy, and it's called Where the Butterflies Rest. And it relates to a place. In Spanish, it's El Descanso de las Mariposas. And it gets referred to as El Descanso, but it's really the story of one man's journey. He's a doctor in the UK, and he's fed up with prescribing.
Right.
And he thinks, you know, this is not real healthcare, just prescribing pills.
Yeah.
He goes on holiday to Spain. And actually, a lot of real people and real places in this book.
Okay.
And I have all their permission to use their real names and their real places.
Wow. Okay,
so,
that's good. So that's, I mean, for people moving here, it's immediately interesting.
Yeah. So he goes to a place which we have stayed at very, very often, Molina del Santo, down in the Ronda Valley.
Okay.
And he's lying back, soaking in the sun by the swimming pool, and he has this, maybe a dream or maybe an out-of-body experience, but he sees this place, very unusual looking place, and when he comes to, he thinks, this is home. He's out walking with some friends who we're still in contact with, and I don't think Paul is doing the mountain walks now for health reasons, but they're out walking in the mountains in around the Guadiaro Valley. And they come across this ruined building, and he almost vomits because he said, this is the place.
Wow.
So he says it has to be done. So he goes through a long process of buying this house in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And he's going to set it up as a kind of wellness retreat.
Okay.
So that's where the story starts.
And where did you get the inspiration then? Was it, because I'll tell you a personal story now, but where did the inspiration for him turn up and going, this is the place? Is that, and does it relate to anything you felt when you came?
Possibly. It's probably not a coincidence that the place we live in here, where we're filming from, is called Finca La Mariposa.
Yeah.
I think, you know, butterflies are very interesting creatures. Firstly, because every culture around the world has its own myths and beliefs around butterflies.
Yeah.
They also have this connection with transformation. When my late wife and I decided to move to Spain, we had an apartment here and we decided to make the move. We came to visit this place, and it was almost like, yeah, we can live here.
Yeah.
There's something about this place that this is it.
And it's nothing you can't. We had a similar experience, me and Lara, but it was different. I lived up in Tarragona, which is close to Barcelona.
Yes, yeah.
We worked there. We had jobs there. Lara, when I met Lara, she moved over, and we've been together 3 days. We're apart. Been together ever since. And we then, obviously, when you're young and in love, plans to get married, plans to have kids, etc. And our second winter together, we decided to get a little car and travel to Andalusia because all our friends were from Andalusia.
Right.
And I never felt like the north was home. I think it was a job, it was fun, it was okay.
Yeah, good experience.
Good experience. And we didn't really know what we were doing. And we travelled to Andalusia, and we'd never been past Valencia at that point. And the moment we got into Granada, but into Andalusia, we suddenly were like, this is where we want to live.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny enough, everybody in the north at that point considered, what the hell would you go to Andalusia for? You've got permanent jobs here, contracts, etc. And but that feeling was just when we got here, we were like, this is where we want to live, this is where we want to get married, this is where we want to bring up children. And I don't know, can't hit the nail on the head.
No.
But that's what happened, same as,
Yeah, it feels right. Well, I've never lived anywhere in my life for 22 years, but I've lived here for 22 years. And it's like, I can't imagine, maybe the day will come, but I can't imagine living somewhere else because this feels like home.
Yeah.
So there's probably a lot of connections here, about why. The second book in the series was I loved writing this book. It's a historical novel and it's a prequel to Where the Butterflies Rest.
Okay.
It's called The Butterfly Dream because when Tom Andrews, the protagonist, buys this place, he finds out that originally when it was built, and he finds out the family that are still in the area who technically own the building, it was called El Sueño de la Mariposa, the Butterfly Dream.
Wow.
And it's a historical novel, but it's the prequel because it takes place across 3 continents.
Right.
Over, I think it's about 200 years. And it tells the story of how this building came to be here in mountains of Andalusia.
Right.
It takes place in a place called the Temple of the Azure Cloud in China, which is a real place.
Right.
It takes place in South America during the last years of the Spanish Empire in South America, and the last viceroy is there. That's all real. Yeah. It takes place during the in Gibraltar during the Battle of Trafalgar.
Right.
So there are lots of connections and lots of real people, real historical characters.
It's a huge amount of research.
It's about 6 months research.
Wow.
And about 6 or 7 months to write it.
Right.
And a friend of ours, the daughter was doing her Cuarto de ESO exams and was struggling with history. And this was the period up to 1870 that she was studying. She read the book and she said, "Now I understand it," and she passed the history exam.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
The Duke of Wellington is in there in the Peninsular Wars. Napoleon is around and about. In South America, we've got the revolution by Simón Bolívar. A very unusual character called Gregor MacGregor, who married his niece, I think, just to get a commission in the Revolutionary Army of Simón Bolívar, which is all real.
Right. Wow.
So it's a lot of research, but it all comes back down to how did El Sueño de la Mariposa, the Butterfly Dream, come to be built in Andalusia.
Wow.
And it's also about, and if I move on to the third part, which is just about to be published, The Call of the Butterfly, The House by the Stream, it's all about how we are connected across time and space, and how a decision made by someone 100 years ago in a different continent actually has impacted on our lives now. Right. So we are all connected, and time is relative. Yeah. Because I used to think that my grandmother, that lived in a totally different time zone from me, but now as I'm getting older, and I consider that she was born in 1898. It's like, okay, we're in 2024, but I have a direct, she's dead now, but I have a direct connection with the 19th century. Yeah. So all of a sudden, my life connection reaches over 3 centuries.
And you don't know how that connection has affected.
Yeah, it's just it's all relative. When you're young, and your granny's 60, she's ancient. Yeah. And then as you get older, and you think, well, I knew somebody really well who was born before the Wright brothers did their first flight.
Yeah. Yes.
and you know, I wish now I could go back and talk to her about these things, you know.
Yeah, you do, don't you? It's,
so yeah, it is about how time is really quite relative, and it also asks the question, you know, to what extent are our lives determined by ourselves, and to what extent are our lives determined by all these things that have gone before. And the third book, which has taken me 7 years to get around to writing with all other books in between, really comes back to the present time, and there is a mystery to solve.
Okay.
Which is around this medallion, and the symbols on the back of this medallion.
Okay.
And Tom has a mission. And he has to unravel this mystery, which goes back from old journals, from the man who built this house, which he now has, and other bits of information that he has. And he ends up in this place, the house by the stream. It's a real place.
Right.
And actually, Vicky and I have been there. And seen the standing stone, and there's a history to this, and it pulls the past and the present all together.
So I mean, this is a huge, for people who are moving to Andalusia, I mean, it's a huge insight into not only, because you move to Andalusia, it's very nice because we've got the Alhambra and we've got this, we've got that. But this maybe open a Pandora's box of a little bit more of the history and where things happen in a fun way. You know, because a lot of people would not think to even look that deep into it, into the history, and maybe wouldn't even know where to.
Well, the house by the stream is actually in Scotland.
Okay, so the house by the stream is in Scotland. So,
but there is a direct connection between that, or the many connections between that. It's a real place, and this building in Andalusia.
Which when we went to a place called, I'll tell you what it's called now, Teba.
I know Teba, yes.
Teba, and we went to the castle in Teba, and we did the tour there, which you would just, it's something you see on a hill, but it doesn't seem to be advertised anywhere. And the history, the house of Scotland.
Indeed, it does,
and the Guadalhorce Valley. I'm not going to ruin it for everybody, because you need to go to Teba and learn. I took my kids, we're going to go back when they're a bit older, because they didn't fully appreciate it. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So, I mean, if talking about, for people who are moving to Spain, a novel and an insight, this is going to be brilliant to read, isn't it?
And you know, the first book is when Tom, the protagonist, moves to Spain. So you know, there's a lot of the experiences that people, I think, will relate to as well. Just you know, what it's like to move from one country to another, and how everything seems so new and everything sems so intense.
As you say, time is relative. And it's like that. And we always say to we give our clients books, because I wrote when I first got here, I kept a diary, and I'm not very good at keeping a diary. I only kept it for a year. And I haven't kept another one since. And that, when I read back at it, it's 24 years ago. I look at, I think, well, it actually was a diary, but it's full of things like menus that I'd stuck in there, and receipts and pesetas that I stuck in there, and I wish I'd have carried on. You know, because who knows what that would look like now, because the way I feel now living here, and
because we forget.
We forget, and it's important.
We also forget, Chris, the excitement. You know, it's very easy for things just to become mundane and mediocre, and Vicky and I will often go. We live just outside La Cala. We'll often go down there, and we'll sit on a bench. And just people watch and take it in, and we have to say to ourselves, we live here. We live here. And not just take it for granted.
Absolutely. No, I agree. It's something that I'm consciously trying to do myself at the moment as well, because you work and school and this, that, the other, and then so you can sit down and go, you know what, just take a minute.
And just enjoy.
Brilliant. Well, okay, so that was the Butterfly trilogy, and now we're going on to a very fun trilogy, which was written in between and post the Butterfly trilogy, and it's all about a place called
Calapene.
Right, so we have here 3 books in front of us: Peanuts Don't Grow on Trees, The Cock Rock Festival, and the pride of Calapene. Bill, I'll let you go ahead and explain.
Well, I didn't retain my seat in the 2023 elections. That's life, that's politics, that's fine. For a variety of reasons, which I won't go into, I found myself unemployed. And Vicky, who is always my catalyst, said, look, you need to do something. And I thought, well, I want to do something that's fun.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm going to start, I knew from the beginning it's going to be a series of books, and it's going to kind of pull in my experiences, not just here in Mijas, but because people say, oh, this is about Mijas. It's not. It's a little village, a little coastal village, somewhere on the south coast of Spain, and it's completely invented. Even the picture is invented, but it's one of these places that's been locked in time. It's surrounded by mountains. The best access is really by sea. Yeah. And there are 3 families who have been there. The whole story is there for about 100 years, who have made it their village. And when democracy came to Spain, of course, guess who became the local council? It was really all these 3 families and their relatives. So they really held this iron grip on the village for 40 years. Yeah. Calapene, if you translate it into English, it's Penis Cove. Now, the interesting thing is, I was looking for a name for it and found out that I think it's in Galicia, there is a place called Villapene, Penisville. So I thought, okay, it has to go from there.
It has to go from there.
So, and the reason it's called Penis Cove is that they have this kind of rock formation which provides a harbour, which is a bit phallic in nature, which they call La Roca Pene, which in English would be the Cock Rock. Yeah. So that's where it all starts. Now, they've been selling off properties over the years to foreigners to get a bit of, ready cash, liquidate their assets. And there's a German artist who has moved there, and he's feeling that the foreigners don't get a fair slice of the cake, so he sets up his own party. And he calls it the International Residents Association, which obviously becomes the IRA. So there's a great confusion when they hear that the IRA is coming to Calapene, which actually was run by the Calapene Revolutionary Alternative Party. So it had been under crap government for 40 years. And well, I shouldn't tell you all the bits of the story.
I was going to say, but so there's a lot of when you read it, you will laugh, but the political parties, and you might as well tell them the last one now.
well, yes, we have 2 other ones, which is the Calapene Workers' Commission, which is the Comisión Obreras de Calapene, which is the Cock Party. And we also have the Partido Rural Independiente de Calapene, which is the environmental party, which is the prick party. So I think you get the picture.
It's really, I mean, it's as I say, it's when you're reading it, apart from the fact that it's a very funny, but this is the only one, admittedly, that I've actually read. And it is, without giving too much away, I mean, there's parts of this book where I think there's one page where you explained every single swear word in Spanish. Yes. In one page, which was really funny, which is quite, we're always talking about, this is a big frustration of ours. So we're talking about how Spanish openly swear in front of kids.
Yes,
sometimes, and I'm thinking, you can't say that, and then like my son is like, he was like, oh, did you hear what he just said? But then when I was reading it here, it just resonated when you were saying in politics, this is there's a line that's blurred.
It's not for people who are overly political correct or are very easily offended, because obviously it's in English, and I tried to reflect the language that Spaniards use, and actually they do swear a lot. And if you were to translate all these words into English, you would go, oh my goodness, you know. So yeah, they're swearing in it, but it kind of reflects in many ways the way that everyday people will speak in conversations and and moving on to, we're not going to give you too many of the characters, but moving on to some of the characters which are reflected in the book. Obviously this is fiction. It is. But you must have had an idea for some of them. From some people you met. Yes. Absolutely, but actually, I have to put my hand on my heart. Where is it? There. Yeah. And say that there's not one character that represents one person that I've met during my lifetime. Right. But you know, I worked with politicians, as I said earlier, but for a lot in the UK. Yeah. So some of the characters are people that I knew then. Yeah. And a lot of the characters in this book are composites of people. Taking the worst bits of 2 or 3 people and rolling them up into one character. Yeah. But I really. People have read this and said, "Oh, I know who this is," and I'm thinking, I don't know who it is. Yeah. But it's experiences and composite characters all pulled together, and some of them are quite comical characters. Yeah. But they're based on, very often, there's a lot of comical characters around, and you move into the world of politics, and there are a lot of comical characters around.
It's true. Lara, my wife, an Upsticks driver, she also writes children's books. She's on her first novel. She's writing short stories now, but her first novel, which I'll do a completely different video and promote her anyway. But the characters, which are not even human, a lot of them are actually based around people that she very loosely, the phrase is about people that she met, the characters here. So it doesn't have to be based on one set person. But going back to this, I mean, if you're moving to Spain and you read Peanuts Don't Grow on Trees, it's a great insight. It's a great fictional insight and a bit of fun on how things could work in a town. And if you live here in Spain and spent a lot of time in Spain, I just laughed my head off because it resonated so much. Yeah. With what I've seen.
It's also as well about what I would claim to be the ridiculous decisions that politicians make because they think it makes them look good. Yeah. And everybody declares a climate emergency because that's the right thing to do. Yeah. Then you ask the question, so what are you going to do about it? Yeah. What do you mean, what we're going to do about it? We've declared a climate emergency. Yeah. So the idea is that, a lot of virtue signalling takes place within the political realm. Yeah. And people don't even know why they're virtue signalling. They just know it's the right thing to do.
Which resonates with the current drought situation. Well, because I've seen a lot of different town halls, but has anybody actually told anybody we're in drought? You can't do, but okay, so what's the action that we've got to take? Sure. Sometimes.
And they don't really think beyond that very often. I'm taking the mickey out of the kind of things that politicians will do, especially if they're caught off guard, which is where Peanuts Don't Grow on Trees comes from, because the then mayor, when she's challenged about what we're going to do, and she thinks, we'll plant trees. Or what kind of trees? Oh, we'll plant peanut trees, because we could then make Calapene peanut butter. Yeah. And someone says to her, but peanuts don't grow it. What do you mean they don't grow on trees? Yeah. Yeah. Almonds grow on trees, walnuts grow on trees, of course peanuts grow on trees. Yeah. I am, and they decide to stick up some solar panels in places that get no sun and do kind of ridiculous things. Yeah. And we do see that.
Yeah. I know it's. I mean, I haven't never been involved in politics myself, but you see the result of some of the ridiculous decisions.
Yeah, and, you get out one morning and a road's been blocked off, and now it's one way, and you think, why? Yeah,
why? But surely, if you, I always look at. I'll be honest, I was looking sidetracking. I look at Malaga Airport, and I always think they've got the road going the wrong way round. Yes. Why'd you have to go all the way round to park, and when you could just come this way, park, and then leave that way.
Yeah.
That's my biggest thing.
Yeah,
but anyway,
yeah.
so let's go on to the Cock Rock Festival, which is after Peanuts Don't Grow on Trees. So we've learned about the town.
Yeah.
Tell us about the festival.
Well, this was a decision that made. I'll let the secret out that this Jürgen Schmidt, the German resident, actually inadvertently ends up becoming mayor.
Right.
And he is left with a legacy of mounting a rock festival, which they thought would be a good idea.
Okay.
Now, people will say, "Oh, this happened in Mijas." I wrote about it first because the Cock Rock Festival doesn't take place like the
Mijas
Rock Festival in Mijas. But I wrote about this a year before.
Right.
So anyway, it is about the him taking over as mayor, finding out that they are millions in debt because they've got a whole basement full of bills that have never been paid, which happens.
Yeah.
Dealing with the people who have been in power for 40 years now being in opposition. And of course, the worst thing is that it's a foreigner that's now the mayor.
Right.
So it's lots of antics, basically.
Brilliant.
And him trying to make sense of it all.
Right. And the same characters continue.
The same. It's a little bit like, I'm calling it the Calapene Chronicles.
Yeah.
So it's a bit like a kind of soap series,
Yeah.
And the same characters are reappearing, and some new characters. We've got Seymour the Psychic appears in this book.
Fantastic.
He's Seymour the Gay Psychic, because I don't want to be too politically incorrect,
Yeah.
And he has an unfortunate surname though.
Go on.
Seymour Cox, the gay psychic.
Oh dear. Which continues the theme from the first book.
It does indeed.
And it is, I mean, I haven't read this one yet, but I'm going to be available on Amazon. I'm going to do some more promotion now. And this is what's coming next.
This is about to be published. I'm waiting on the copies. The Pride of Calapene.
Okay, I don't think I showed you the Cock Rock. Anyway, we're going to be putting the links below, and this is the latest. So I encourage you now to buy these two because this is coming out.
Yeah, and this is another. Declaring climate emergency is one of the virtue signals that councils do.
Yeah.
And the other thing is having some kind of pride event. And the council decide, shall we have a pride event? And of course, nobody wants to say no.
Right.
Because they think that would make them homophobic.
Right.
So they agree to have a pride event.
Yeah.
And find out that the one or two gay couples that live in Calapene are not interested in it.
Right. But they've got to continue.
They have to decide, do we continue with this and why are we doing it? So, it raises a lot of issues as well.
Right.
And, the end story of this is we should all have pride in who we are and in where we live.
Yeah.
So, it will gradually work around towards this, but there's lots of nasty things happening in the background that Mayor Jürgen Schmidt is having to deal with.
Right.
And for those who have an eagle eye, they will see from the two covers that there happens to be a building missing in the third one.
Right.
So there's a story about to happen there as well.
So it's worth it's might be worth a reread once you've read it once. It's definitely, I say I've only read the first one. I can't wait to read these two, but it's definitely something different. That for anybody who's moving to Spain, it's fun as well. It's as I say, it's easy reading, and I would definitely recommend buying these books and having it and it won't take you too long to get through them. But what's the plan after 1, 2, and 3? Is there plans for more?
And number 4 is underway.
Number 4?
Yeah.
So we can see quite more. It's not just a trilogy. This is
no. It's as many books as I can produce, really, because life keeps moving on.
Yeah.
And number 4 is going to be called Running on Empty,
Right.
because for a number of reasons, the mayor finds himself with no money, which is not an unusual situation in local councils as well.
And then there's the one where all the politicians get locked up, or is that in in prison? No, that's not.
Well, they're on their way. We already have one who's taken political asylum in Morocco. So
there's nothing to do with bartenders, there, was it?
No.
Fantastic. Well, guys, look, that was, and there's just one last book. Now, I just wanted to show you this book here, because if you're going to get involved, you might as well check this one out as well. This is completely different. This is poems, is it?
Yes, it's poems, yes.
Okay. So if you want to read any poems, just tell us a little bit about this.
Well, it's a collection of poems, which some of them are a bit fun, some of them are very serious. I've called it A Portrait of the Naked Man, because I think when a poet writes, I don't want to overdo the double meaning here, but there is an exposure, not of the physical body, but of what is going on inside the person. So I think the poet shows themselves naked to the world.
Right. Yeah.
And you find out a lot about the person. So that's the reason for that.
Perfect.
And some have just been fun. Some are well. I think there's a meaning of life part 1 and meaning of life part 2, and it's just exploring ideas and philosophies, and
without necessarily finding an answer, but just
I don't know. Maybe it does.
Maybe it does. There you go. There you go. This is another mystery to read. So anyway, Bill, I'm so pleased that you agreed to come on. Thank you so much,
Chris. It's as always, it's a pleasure to talk with you.
I really, really hope that our followers on the channel and our clients come, and I would encourage you to buy Bill's books, because if you move into Spain, I mean, between here, the 10 books we've got on the table, such an insight into what is Spain, and they're all available on Amazon, aren't they?
All available on Amazon, yes.
All the links below, and the Calapene series is going to continue. So as it does continue, we might have a little cheeky video with the next book with Bill, which that time we might meet in a bar, just to let you know what it is. It won't be this long, the video, but we'll definitely keep in contact with Bill and let you know about his next publication. So Bill, thank you very much,
Chris.
It's your pleasure.
Absolute pleasure.
And so don't forget, if you do like the channel, please subscribe. If you do read Bill's books, please let us know what you thought below on the in the comments, and we'll see you on our next podcast.
Bye-bye.